Okay, so welcome to today's Retro Tech. I'm again looking at a Sony PVM. This is a 1354Q. It's the one you saw in the last video where we did that cool little troubleshoot tip, swapped around some parts and found out that it was the power board that was bad, and that still needs to be replaced. So once I got this thing rolling though, it had some very big problems on the geometry, so rather than going too far into it, I figured why not just go ahead and order another cab kit. And like I said, this chassis, or you can call it the deflection board, it's the same as the 1353 or the OEV Olympus 142 that I just replaced the capacitors on, so that's awesome. We can use the same cap kit for the same monitors. I've decreased the order a little bit. I'm just going to try to do a replacement of the important capacitors on there, like geometry and color, and the bigger ones on the board that are more susceptible to leaks. But what I do want to talk about today is how to paint this thing, because last time I had a little bit of trouble with the paint, and I got some tips on some different techniques, and we'll mention those a little bit later on. But first, let's just start with the shell, getting it ready to paint. Let's go over there now and take a look. Alright, so here you go. You see the shell right here, and I'm going to be a little bit vague about this just because I don't know that there's a specific rule on what kind of sandpaper. This is sandpaper I've used on other painting jobs for furniture, so it's just the lighter, I think it says 150, whatever that means. So I'm going to try this, but I've already rubbed it some. But if you rub the outside of that shell, it starts to take off that outside coating of, there's like a paint slash sealer almost on this one. So it is a good idea to sand this down. I'm going to continue to do that all along the metal part before I disassemble the monitor and clean it. Then when I use a brush again to knock off that stuff after I get done, knock off that paint, get a good look at it. And then when I finish that up, I'll spray this off with water and let it dry for a day. And then I'll come out and I'll put the primer coat on it, and we'll try to figure out what we want to do for the paint job on this one.
So here's a quick update on the paint job. I've just put down a little bit of black paint. Now this is on a bunch of coats of primer. I just did a straight up primer after I sanded it and let it dry overnight, and it came out really nice. And then I just kind of smoothed it over again and started adding black paint. I'll just go through and touch it up, but I'm going to add a bunch of light coats and let them dry for about 10 minutes or so in between each coat, and then just keep playing it on and laying it on, and then I'll put a lacquer coat on top of that, and we'll put it together, and I'll show you why I went this black.
Okay, so I'm still waiting for some parts to come in the mail, specifically the capacitors to repair and replace in this deflection board. There was some issues with the vertical linearity that couldn't be corrected, so I knew the capacitors must need replacing. So when those coming in, we'll tear it down, give the inside a good cleaning. But let's go check out the paint job we're still in progress with. So for this paint job, I stayed with the same hammered finish. I really liked the way it looked on the shells of the PVMs. So I decided to, the first time I went with this antique pewter color gray. This time I went with a black hammered paint finish. And that went on after I put an entire can of primer on the shell that I showed you in the last bit. So I put that coat on, and then of course I finished it off with just a matte finish clear coat. Lots of coats of this to give it a nice protective layer. Let's go take a look at it now as it's finishing up drying.
So currently it's hard to see because it's in an area where I'm just drying it. I have it hung over my lawnmower thing here actually. So just take a quick look though at the black color, and when it dries fully I'll put it back together and we'll take a look at the shell as we continue on with this restoration.
I wanted to clarify one more thing before I went any further on the restoration here. I did note that I'd recently discovered that you could use interchangeable parts on some of these monitors with different versions of the same board. I did need to note something though. it would be very hard, I think, and I'm not sure if possible, to use something that's from a lower end monitor into a higher end monitor, meaning I don't think I could use the power board from this monitor in the 1353 or 1953. There's actually a couple more spots built into that monitor. They're just not, the components aren't populated, or there's nothing in the spot on the board. The board's the same, but the components aren't there. So just note that. You can always go a step down. So if you're looking for something for a 54, you can get a 53. I know it sounds like, well, that's the number down, but it's a reverse order. So again, just going to start getting this thing a good clean up. Wanted to make sure you knew that before we took and left it just open for maybe some kind of confusion.
Okay, here we have our towers of PVMs, and the two on top are the serviced ones. Again, I'm going to be taking both of these to my show coming up in a few weeks, but I just wanted to show them off here. The paint job's complete on my black unit, and just some notes about it. Take a step back. It's harder to see on film, but it looks fantastic. It had a great finish. I was a little bit more patient, sanded a lot ahead of time, cleaned it off, actually let it sit overnight, and then the next morning I primed it again. And then I used a high quality black hammered finish paint on top of that, and it looked really nice. And I'm going to show you, I've already got this shell assembled, so you can just see how great it looks black like that. And the reason this one looks so good black is because it's going against a kind of like this one down here. It's got this gray bezel and then the black inside of the bezel. So you match this black and that, and it just looks fantastic. You see kind of this one I did over here with this medical unit. I have the silver matched with the silver inside here, as well as like the labeling. So it doesn't come out as good in pictures, but that's where I came up with the design on it. It's a plainer design, but I really like the way it came out. So I don't have the parts in yet to finish the full restoration. That's going to be in another episode. We'll do the capacitor and then reassemble this full monitor over here. So look for that to come up. But while you're waiting, let's just go ahead and assemble this monitor with the shell so we can take a look at how it will look when it's finished. Okay, so obviously I don't have my input board in, which I'm not concerned about, and I'm just wanting to slip this shell on, and let's see how it looks. Now, I'm thinking that maybe this could be something there, if I get more experience, you know, we could do some, like I say, some very creative paint jobs. For the time being, I don't want to make anything too crazy that I'd have to go back and correct again, because I'm getting these ones ready for, again, my show, my shop opening for that weekend at the convention coming up in 3 weeks. And I want to make sure I've got at least a couple of great looking PVMs, and with these two there, and then I'll have one 20-inch probably set up at my booth along with all the other merchandise. So let's just take a quick look around now and see how it looks. Oh yeah. See, I know people like think, what? I did have a lot of people, you know, say you should do some crazy colors, which is fine. I'm actually fine with that. But what I'd like to do then is basically take the whole thing apart and paint the bezel too. And there's one I'll show you that we might do that on. That way you could basically make the whole thing a custom job. But just take a look and let me know what you think, how it came out here, at least the paint job part. And for those of you that are curious, this is the monitor that I bought from the auction the other day that I showed the footage for. This is that same monitor. And so that's probably good news for the person who I was in the bidding war with, because they might not have known how to fix it. But I saved it, and it's going to be good to go, and it'll make it to that retro gaming convention next month.
Well, that should about do it for our episode today on painting. Again, I'll continue to update this monitor's progress as we fix it. It will be fixed fully. It's just got to have the capacitors replaced and then calibration. But other than that, a successful restoration, and look for another video on that. But also, let me know what you think. If you have any cool ideas about paint schemes, or if you know where I can get like some high quality stencils made up pretty easily, and then or something I can upload. I'm not really familiar with that, so if anybody knows, please let me know down in the comments, and I'll try it out. But again, thanks for taking time to watch this episode today. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please like, share, and subscribe. And thanks again for watching Retro Tech.